Your family will talk crap about you while you're in the process of breaking all their generational curses. This ain't for the weak, my darling.
Thanksgiving originally celebrated the 1637 massacre of the Pequot tribe. English and Dutch pilgrims surrounded and shot the Pequot natives. Women and children who huddled inside the longhouse were burnt alive. The rotting flesh could be smelled a mile away. John Winthrop, the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, declared a day of Thanksgiving after the slaughter. The remaining women and children were sold into slavery while the rest were murdered. Following a successful raid against the Pequot, the churches announced a second day of Thanksgiving to celebrate victory over the Indian savages. Next Thanksgiving, when you gather with your loved ones to thank God for all your blessings, think about the thousands of natives that were murdered on these national holidays. Truth is.
And where down we go, oh, 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 where down we go, oh, oh, oh.
In your face, how you explain that curly hair? You don't got no way about it. We are the corporate color racists of America. African American. All we gotta do is go south.
That's how you got a civilized nation. Don't forget it. The Civil War was our war, North against the South. It wasn't nothing about no African slaves, baby. Indians enslaved because we lost the war. So we assimilated into United States. Real Indians look like us. Ask Christopher Columbus who he saw when he got off the ship. Let him know when he reported to a king. Why you think you got a brown penny, baby? Copper color Indians, baby.
What do you think about Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with the original Black American Indians. Black Lives Matter is a propaganda to keep blacks thinking that they're African Americans that came on slave shit. We already know we are waking our people up to let them know that we are the American indigenous Indians. Black Lives Matter do not represent our people. We do. Jesse Jackson do not represent our people. Barack Obama do not represent our people. We're not African Americans. We're indigenous. An African American is Obama. Why? Because his mother's European and his father's Kenyan. That's an African American. A real Indian, American Indian is me. Both of my parents are American Indians, not from Africa.
He said, no. I said, when the results come in, make her Zulu, man. You know? I said, you back there making it up anyway. Don't nobody believe you could take some spit and figure out a tribe? What are you, crazy?
William Attlee, and this is a news brief with truth. See the men on the screen. They are the ancestors of the African American, but there is a problem: their true identity. Thomas McNeely has the story.
Well, William, the African American community is deeply divided due to the tagline, African Americans ain't Africans, which can be found in numerous places on the web. Now, it should be obvious as to why it's causing a commotion, but if it escapes you, let me explain. The current American education states African Americans were brought to America as slaves from Africa, which is simply not true. They are American indigenous, not descendants of Africans. As they say, the truth is stranger than fiction. Although this fact isn't spoken of openly, it's not a secret. However, with programming such as Roots, 12 Years a Slave, The African American Story, and The Book of Negroes, is it any wonder why so many African Americans are confused? We won't address all the misleading DNA tests being provided to connect African Americans to Africa. So, the argument is, do they continue identifying as African Americans, which is a fake identity for them, or embrace being identified as indigenous Americans?
Are there any consequences of choosing one identity over the other?
William, that's a good question. According to African Americans Ain't Africans Facebook forum, identifying as African American is to quietly relinquish ancestral connections to America, connections that go back hundreds of thousands of years. A curious story, but one appropriate for February, which is Black History Month in the United States.
What a conundrum. A story worth keeping an eye on for further developments. Thank you, Thomas. The drawing used in this presentation is from the 16th century book, America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World by John Ogilvy and Arnoldus Montanus. As you may have guessed, the men in the drawing are American. I'm William Attlee, and this has been a news brief with truth.
The term African American to refer to all black people was endorsed only since 1989, but was against the desires of the majority of black people. In fact, the term was endorsed by only 5 people, including Reverend Jesse Jackson and Ramona Edlin leading the charge, as a result of a gathering called the African American Summit, without the input of the majority of black people. Author Avis J. Smith went to the district court in Washington, D.C. to stand against this term, as well as against the notion that a small group of powerful individuals should be able to compel the masses into adopting it. African American, the opposition court case, asks the question, who sanctions language? Who creates and enforces the wording that we use day in and day out? And do these people actually have the authority to do so?
"100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land." Now, have you ever wondered what that passage meant from Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech? I did, and what I found was one of the biggest secrets that's not really a secret at all, except to many African Americans, is they are not descended from Africans. I know, I was shocked too, so much so that I asked Africans, and they agreed African Americans weren't Africans. If you don't believe me, Google Arnoldus Montanus America and see the people he saw in 1671. Read books like The Black American Handbook for Survival Through the 21st Century by Radine Amin-Ra, What Every African American Should Know by Carrie Davis, and Africans and Native Americans by Jack Forbes. I just can't believe schools aren't teaching this stuff. What a travesty.
Are black people the original people?
Mexicano? Whoa! Whoa, stop, bro. Taking into account that you seriously want me to believe that the same people that murdered us, killed us, raped us, stole our land, stole our resources, and stole everything from us are the same people that's supposed to come back and get justice for us? Come on, stop playing with my top.
I'm shutting that shit down. Shut that big thing. I'm shutting that shit down. Shut that big thing. I'm shutting that shit